Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Wassalatu wassalam ala Rasulillah wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'een. Welcome back to the Happy Strong Family podcast. My name is Shahzad Mustafa, and it's really great to be back on the show. I have great pleasure to introduce our regular guest on the show, Dr. Zihan Rashid. Dr. Rashid, welcome.
Jazakallah khair. Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullah. Thank you for coming on the show.
Pleasure.
So we're really excited about this podcast and the next couple of podcasts coming afterwards because the Ramadan is around the corner, alhamdulillah. In about 5 weeks, 6 weeks, inshallah, we should be entering this blessed month. And we thought it'd be great to talk about Ramadan and what can we as Muslims, as families, do to prepare ourselves for this month so that we can gain the benefits of the month and have a healthy experience throughout the month, inshallah. So in this podcast, Dr. Rashid, we really want to talk more about the planning stages, right? Just as we do with other things in our lives, we like to prepare, right? The better preparation we have for something, then the better experience is of that thing. You know, it's very similar to if you want to go on a family vacation, we don't just get in the car and drive without even planning. We plan ahead. We know what we want to accomplish. We look out for the obstacles that might come along the way. We make sure we have enough mental, emotional, and physical preparation to enjoy that vacation. So Ramadan is also a very unique month. It's a whole month, right, where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given us an opportunity to grow ourselves and to gain the benefits of this month. So I really want to just start off with some very simple question is, what can we do, first of all, what advice do you have for us to mentally prepare ourselves for this month so we are acquainted with this month and the benefits of Ramadan? If you could shed some light on that, Dr. Rashid.
Jazakallah khair, Brother Shahzad. So, really, the ability to look at Ramadan as a unique opportunity, as you said, and mentally thinking of this as I've often thought to myself, if I was running the Olympic marathon, what would I do to get prepared? Mm-hmm. I'm sure I won't be sleeping and hoping that I will win. I'm sure I will have an active mindset to say, if I'm winning this game, if I'm winning this race, I need to be prepared for it. As you absolutely correctly said, the bigger the project, the importance of the project should make me act on it. So I would say there are three things that I like to think about when it comes to mental preparation. First of all, very much is that mental and that mindset to say, what do I assume is the purpose of Ramadan? And we know from the Quran that Allah Ta'ala has said, Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu kutiba alaykum as-siyamu kama kutiba alaykum alladhina min qablikum la'allakum tattaqun. O you who believe, this month of fasting has been given to you to bring you closer to Allah. So that itself right away makes me think, if my mental attitude is to bring myself close to Allah, well, what are the things that bring me close to Allah? In my book, my spiritual connection with Allah every day is Salah. It's this prayer that is a 5-time connection with Allah. So I would say if my mind was not somehow geared around the day being geared around or focused around Salah, that would be the first thing I would start thinking about. Let us get this very important thing that is there all along to get that in order. Number 2 is to figure out what is the really next important thing in Ramadan. I hope it's not food. I hope it's not socializing. I hope it's not the desire to eat a lot at the time of iftar. It can be, but it's not the focus. So the second thing I would say is make myself aware that I have to be prepared by fasting before fasting season even arrives. The Prophet ﷺ, we know, used to fast in Sha'ban. We have got Sha'ban ahead of us. Yeah. Let's start fasting once a week. Mm-hmm. That would at least get our mindset into thinking, I'm not going to suddenly find myself struggling on day 5 and 6 where I'm just unable to manage my day because I'm so hungry. Yeah. So I think that would be the second thing. A third thing would be to make sure that I have isolated myself from those things that distract me most often. And digital devices are infamous, unfortunately, that they use up a person's time inappropriately, I think. And this may necessarily not apply to everybody, but because the addiction is very widespread, I think the third thing would be to isolate myself from those things that are taking me away from my, if you like, purpose.
Yes,
so those three things to start with: fasting, once or twice a week, getting my salah, my prayers in order, and thirdly, isolating myself from things that distract me on a regular basis. I think that would be my beginning of this conversation.
Yeah, that's very insightful, Dr. Rashid. In fact, I was even in the public discourse, even non-Muslims are writing about this this phenomenon of being overwhelmed with too much information, being overwhelmed with too much distraction, our devices, social media. In the Islamic terminology, we call this dunya, right? It's just so much that's keeping us anxious and worried and occupied. In Ramadan, as an opportunity for us to recenter our purpose in our lives a little bit by actively trying to minimize things which are not essential in our lives, seems to be a very important aspect of this month. So that last point you made was quite important, I think, for our audience. So moving on to the next question, what are some practical tips that families can use to prepare themselves for Ramadan? And this includes obviously not parents only. One of the challenges is that as adults who are already enthusiastic about our faith and enthusiastic about Ramadan, we're looking forward to it. However, a lot of other people, may be looking at this, oh my God, my life is going to get disrupted, or I have to now make sacrifices, and they're not necessarily thinking about it in the right way. Sometimes even children. So what advice do you have in terms of our children and families to help them prepare for Ramadan?
Jazakallah khair, another very relevant question. So again here, Shahzad, when there is a family, there is also a family focus. Most of the days we focus on getting together perhaps once a day and sit and eat a meal together and maybe chit-chat about the day. I would suggest now we sit together still, but now we actually start talking together as a family and try and involve everybody in the conversation. I wouldn't as a father necessarily say, well, I know it all, so here's what we will be doing. I would say involve everybody in a shura methodology, consultation, to say, okay, Aisha, what would you like to do with this Ramadan? What would your focus be? And if it's little Ahmad, I would say, how would you like to participate in Ramadan? So the first thing I would do is a consultation mode where people start to feel that it's everybody's responsibility and interest to enjoy the month. Yes. So it's not coming from the top and being percolated down on the masses, but it's actually, if you like, a family affair. Yes. That'd be the first thing I would do. Start getting the family excited about something that only would happen, shouldn't say only happen, but largely will happen when you talk about it. Yeah. And we know that what we start talking about starts to get importance in our life. So that would be my start. The second thing would be to have some kind of a planning as almost like a chart, for example, to say who would like to plan the meals for the month, who would like to take responsibility for what we should be eating. So perhaps we're eating everything and anything. Next thing I would say is what foods are more likely to benefit us in this month. So how about if we establish certain guidelines for what would be healthy eating during the month? Maybe one of my family members would like to take that responsibility. It could become their month's project, if you like. Yeah. The third thing I would do is figure out as a family, but what would we like to do together? Right. Is it something like the Quran, for example, that we have not necessarily read as a family? Would it be the life of the Prophet ﷺ? Would it be the insights into some of the beautiful companions? Would we like to perhaps look at what Ramadan was in the past and what we would like it to be? So it's almost like a project that's unfolding where children and youngsters are all becoming involved in one component or the other. So who will take the responsibility of waking us up for sahur? Who will take the responsibility of setting up iftar? I mean, it can be so many things. So that's what I say, the physical aspect of it, partly spiritual. Then I would say Quran should be a big part of any family's participation in the month of Ramadan. And we know that during the daytime it's a little bit difficult, but if we can find some time during which, for example, the weekends when the whole family hopefully is home, I mean, for the COVID situation as it is, likely everybody's at home anyway, let's give some dedicated time to the Quran every day, so that we don't end up doing another set of Taraweeh where we have heard beautiful recitation, but we've understood nothing. I did, for example, last year with my family, we had 4 weeks, so we picked up one prophet story and we did a story a week, so that we actually had very good insight into, for example, the Prophet Musa alayhi salam, from, depending on who has interest in what. For example, the involvement of Maryam in the development of her child, which is the only woman mentioned in the Quran. So getting the children also kind of taking Quran as a project in addition to Ramadan and its fasting. The third project I found is developing certain habits that may not be been easy during the year. And one of them, I think, is the getting up early in the morning. And that's not to be undertaken lightly, because that's not a small project. So when children and not so young children get responsibility given to them, which I think is a big part of Ramadan's improvement of our relationship, for example, I think those are things that will help our children. And one last thing I would add is whatever is done gradually will likely hold. So I wouldn't stick all of this on day one, but I would plan from now to say this is what we'll be doing. And let people come in with their own suggestions also. This is not by any means an exhaustive list. I'm just saying this could start a conversation.
Yeah, it's a very good point you made, Dr. Rashid, around communication. I think, if we communicate, if parents communicate strategically with their family to get, them to buy into, whatever activities we want to do in this month, if everyone has made suggestions, then it's more likely that everyone will participate in those activities. That's really great. I think that's really all I have on my list today, Dr. Rashid. Before we end off, are there any last minute points you would like to make just around the idea of mentally preparing ourselves? One point that did come to mind actually before I close off was this whole notion of, I guess at a bigger level, is what are our overall mindset that we need to that would be beneficial to connect with before entering this month. And some of the things that I kind of came up with was, the idea of consumption, right? The idea of consuming less. What is the benefit of the idea of consuming less, and how does that give us a certain amount of power in our lives? Whether it be in our religious life or even our practical lives. How does the idea of consuming less, being able to withhold, being able to self-regulate, how does that benefit the human being? Right, I'll do that to you.
I think it's very important, very important, I think, to understand the concept of control, the ability to self-regulate, as you said. This is something that modern society has sadly not emphasized as much as it could. I'm not talking about the corporate world where it becomes essential. I'm talking about the world where everybody is for themselves. It's a me, myself, and I world. I think there the idea that what is available is still restricted because I decide what is good for me based on what I know. So, for example, just taking that physical consumption part, we know that the world is suffering from obesity just as much as it is having a concept of as it's having an effect from starvation. And the obesity concept affecting the individual is very much a self, if you like, destructive episode. It's not something that has been it's been, if you like, thrown on us. We've really adopted it. So I think that itself to say, did you realize that restricting consumption of the physical intake is one of the best ways to avoid illness?
Yes.
Illness that could potentially knock off years from a person's life.
Yes.
Illness that could restrict their ability to be the useful person that they are, not just to their family, but to the wider world. Also, illness that costs the country, wherever they live, a lot of money. It takes up useful resources. It not only restricts the individual's ability to do things, it actually restricts the overall ability of productivity to go down. Because if there are so many sick people, we all know the demonstration of what has happened with COVID-19. It has really checked the ability of the economy and the health system to cope with what is an unprecedented illness. Well, people forget that heart disease, diabetes, cancer, and other illnesses are not taking a smaller toll, much bigger toll. So I would say, if we can say, fasting is one of the best ways to stay healthy long term. We're not talking about a month, 2 months. We're talking about the rest of your life. I think we can bring in to say consumption, A, gives you control, but B, it gives you very good health for a very long time. So it's very worthwhile, not just promoting for the Muslims, but promoting in general.
Yes. No, thank you very much. And I think the other element to physical consumption is I don't know what term to use, but it's more of our intellectual consumption. You know, we are consuming so much media, so much social, young people in particular. You know, there's I keep badgering my kids, around the TikToks and Instagrams and all of the Facebook, not Facebook for younger kids anymore, but I mean the other tools are there. There's a lot of consumption going on, and that leads to a lot of unproductive sort of
Habits,
behaviors, right?
Yeah.
Being overwhelmed, being anxious,
Yeah.
constantly worrying about other people, and and so on. And that does take away from our spiritual journey as well. So I think the idea of consumption is a very valid point, and I hope our audience can take that away from this. If one thing they can take away is, let's monitor our consumption and regulate it, inshallah. So Jazakallah khair again.
Yeah,
It was a very
inshallah.
useful discussion for us. I hope our audience benefits.
Inshallah.
We hope that our audience enters into the month of Ramadan with goodness, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives them blessings in the month and gives them reward for fasting.
Ameen.
And Ameen. And please, we ask our audience to subscribe to Happy Strong Family, visit the website, follow the podcast. And please, if you find something beneficial in the podcast, spread it, share it with others so others may benefit, inshallah. Jazakallah khair. Assalamu alaikum.
Yeah, wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullah.